Hello everyone. I said I'd post an update on my in-progress racing game Canyon Run, so here is that update. A few quick notes about the footage you're about to see. As before, the tracks are temporary, as is the overlay, and all footage is running between 45 and 50 hertz, so there's no visible flickering in person, but you might want to make sure your YouTube playback is set to 60 FPS for the smoothest video. And if you just want to see some current gameplay instead of listening to me blather, you can use the timestamp below. Unlike my past updates, I don't have any one big new feature to show. Instead, I have a bunch of smaller things mostly related to improving the core gameplay and some general polish. After my last video, I felt like something was missing and experimented with having a second button or maybe the Y-axis of the joystick do something. I tried various things, but eventually settled on the old racing standby of boosting. The way that it works is as long as the boost button is held, you'll go significantly faster, but it will drain the boost meter in the corner of the screen. Rather than having pickups to replenish boost, the boost bar recharges gradually on its own, which I prefer because it makes when you get boost very predictable, which better fits the strategic use of it that I am going for. I wanted boosting to come at a cost, so you couldn't just use it anywhere. So boosting also decreases grip, so you'll slide more while boosting. And this means you have to be judicial about where you use it. If you're going around a sharp turn, it's probably not a good idea to boost, as you'll just end up wasting boost and possibly skidding into a wall. So it's really best used in straightaways. Although once you're acquainted enough with the mechanics, you can use it as you're coming out of a turn. You just have to compensate more for the increased drift. The boost meter is also your hit point meter. When you collide with a wall or another ship, you'll take damage, which will reduce the meter. So it's really a power meter similar to F-Zero X and GX. When your power gets low, your ship will start flashing, and if it goes to 0, you'll be destroyed and the race will be over for you. So that's another reason you have to be careful boosting, especially because collision damage scales exponentially with velocity, and it's easy to hit high velocities while boosting. I don't have a proper death animation yet, as I wanted to wait until I had sound so I can sync the animation with the sound. So for now, the ships just fade out when they die. AI ships can be destroyed, but it's a very rare occurrence, so it's generally not a good idea to try to take them out, but if you're lucky, one of them could theoretically bite the dust before a race is finished. AI ships can't boost, but their cruise speed is generally going to be higher than the players to compensate, which means that you have to boost to get ahead of them or keep them from catching up. Under the hood, I've made it so that AI attributes, including their drift characteristics, can be edited on a per opponent basis, which makes the AI more interesting because it gives the opponent's strengths and weaknesses that are situational, so which one will end up being the best for a track isn't always immediately clear. And these characteristics are editable per track and per difficulty level, so the plan is to have maybe 3 difficulty levels, so you work up to the more challenging races while learning the controls and the tracks, and that will hopefully make the game more accessible while still providing some longevity and challenge for experienced players. At any rate, these changes make the game much more fun and intense to me, and I think fill the void that I felt was there before. I'm not planning to have any other buttons do anything other than a pause menu, as I want to keep the controls simple. Other than that, there is a goal line now on each track, as well as the concept of laps for the tracks that loop. You'll get a laps remaining message crossing the line, and the line will flash on the last lap. I also added a rank indicator in the top right that tells you your current placement relative to your opponents, as well as a countdown before the race starts. There were a few other small changes, including a wrong way message when you go the wrong way, some optimizations to the physics and collision code, and some improvements to the collision handling, most notably making wall collisions a little bit bouncier. A few people have expressed interest in having spinner support, which I said I'd look into if I could get a spinner controller, And as it happens, I received one of Victor Marlin's Tempest controllers while I was making this video, so I figured I'd include some footage of the game using it. I wasn't sure how it would play with the spinner, but I think it works quite well. I'm still better using an analog stick, but then I have way more experience with sticks, and I think I could become just as good with the spinner with more experience. There are pros and cons to each, so I don't think either is inherently better. I think it'll just come down to personal preference. The encoder on this controller has a resolution of, I believe, 24 pulses per revolution, and I found that just polling button states once per frame wasn't enough, as it was possible for the player to move through more than one step in a frame if spinning the controller quickly. So I'm now polling twice per frame, so the polling rate is roughly 100 Hz, which is fine for actual gameplay, although you can still trip it up if you really try. I could pull more frequently to support higher resolution controllers, but every pull comes at a performance cost, so I don't know if I want to do that. Bottom line is that the game should be fine for controllers with resolutions up to 24 or maybe 32 pulses per revolution, but I'm not sure about higher yet. In any event, I will allow the sensitivity at least to be adjusted in the final game, and by sensitivity I mean the angle by which your ship rotates with each pulse of the encoder. I'm now going to talk about some of the things that I experimented with that may or may not make it into the final game. One I mentioned in my last video as something I'd like to have is different visual representations for the different AI ships. And here are some temporary models that I was playing around with. The bottom line on that is that while I like being able to tell the opponents apart through more than just brightness, it will come at a cost to either storage space or CPU cycles or some combination of the two, depending on the method. And I haven't decided if that trade-off is worth it yet, so that's why I didn't show all the preceding footage with this version. I also added the capability to have 2D tracks, mainly to support more opponents at once, but I found that 2D tracks have considerably less sense of speed and feel a lot narrower, and I don't think that the added opponents really make the game any better, so I don't know if it's worth bloating the code with a separate rendering routine or slowing the existing one down with additional conditions to support both modes. I may wait until designing the final tracks to make a call on that, as it might prove a greater asset on longer tracks where the ships have more opportunity to be spread out. But as of now, I'm leaning against having 2D tracks. I know I mentioned in the past that I was considering having a narrative-focused game with a sequence of missions with varying objectives, but I think I'm going to limit its scope to a pure racing game for the time being, to keep it from taking even longer to finish, and also because I think it would be easier to make a fun game if it's just pure racing. Even so, I would not expect the game to be finished this year given my rate of progress, as I still have a lot left, including adding sound, the concept of a series of tracks or cup or something with a point system or other mechanism like having a minimum rank for each race to determine player progression and victory. A UI, a title screen, a tracked mode. A really big thing that I'd like to do is port the code to assembly for best performance. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to do that because it's running well in C right now, but I just feel like if I can make it better, I should. And then I have to create a track editor, which is another big project in itself. And of course, using it to create the final set of tracks that will appear in the game. And that's just on the software side of things. But on the plus side, I should have more time to work on the game going forward than I did in the past year. So that's about all I have to say. As always, thank you for watching, and feedback is welcome. And I'll leave you with some footage of a couple of complete races.